Hey there folks, Mr. G here with another educational video. This time we're going to be talking about some word problems for multiplying and dividing fractions. One of the key techniques when it comes to word problems is figuring out what sort of word problem you're dealing with and what sort of operations it's talking about. One of the key giveaways for a multiplication problem is you'll see words like times or of. This tells you that multiplication is involved. Here's our first problem. Sarah got 8 1/3 hours of sleep last night. Felipe slept for 3/4 of that time. How many hours did Felipe sleep? The key word here that we're looking at is this of. If he slept for 3/4 of that time, that of tells us multiplication. In particular, it tells us that Felipe slept for 3/4 times that time being 8 1/3 hours. So the answer to this question would be calculated by doing 3/4 times 8 1/3. 3/4 of 8 1/3. Once we get that all done, now this is just a multiplication problem. It's not really a word problem anymore. When we're doing multiplication, we need to make sure that both of our fractions are proper or improper. So let's change our mixed fraction here. Once we have this, we can either just multiply the tops and the bottom, or we can cross-reduce. You know what, let's multiply the tops and bottom in this case. Now we can reduce our fraction by dividing by 3. Notice that if I did cross-reducing, I would have divided by 3 beforehand. I can divide by 3 now. It doesn't really make a difference. Now because this question asked us in a mixed fraction for the number of hours, let's convert this into a mixed fraction. If you remember, what we need to do is we need to divide 25 by 4 and look at what the answer and the remainder is. 4 goes into 25 6 times, and our remainder is 1. So our answer would be 6 1/4 hours of sleep. All right, here's our next example. Rick has 18 shirts. Nancy has 1 1/6 times as many shirts as Rick, how many shirts do they have all together? Again, the key word here that gives it away is this word times. So that tells us that Nancy has 1 1/6 times 18 shirts. Again, we've got to turn this fraction into an improper fraction. Here we're going to use some cross-reducing. This is like 18 over 1 as a fraction. We can reduce these two by dividing by 6. 3 times 7 is 21 over 1, which is the same as just 21. So Nancy has 21 shirts. Notice we get a whole number here, which makes sense. If we got a fraction here, we'd probably want to pause and think if we did something wrong. It seems strange if we would get a fractional number of shirts. To answer the question, how many shirts do they have together, we take the number of shirts that Nancy has, add it to the number of shirts Rick has, and there we go. 39 would be our final answer. Now when it comes to dividing word problems, these ones tend to be a lot harder. But there is some key language that you will see with dividing problems that can help you notice that they are dividing problems. One of them is where you see a question that asks you how many times as big, or how many times as long, or fast, or much is something compared to something else. I know that seems a little bit abstract, but this times as, this right here, this is a really key giveaway that dividing will be part of our problem. The other type of language you'll see is that you'll be given some information about some amount it takes to produce something else, and then you ask how much would it take to produce something else. Again, really abstract, but as an example you could say, let's say it's $5 for 8 books. How much would it cost if you wanted to buy 10 books? That's the type of question that you would see. And again, this one would involve division. Let's look at this example here. Frida is making cookies. It takes 3/4 of a cup of sugar for 20 cookies. How much sugar does she need for 25 cookies? Again, the key language we're seeing here is cups of sugar for something else. So some amount for some amount. And then how much sugar does it take for 25 cookies? The first step in these types of problems is to figure out how much it's going to be for one cookie. And this is where division is involved. If it's 3 3/4 for 20 cookies, then for one cookie, it would be 3 3/4 divided by 20. If this produces 20, we need to divide this up into 20 pieces for 1. Here, we got to convert this into an improper fraction, and we also need to flip our second number to make it into a reciprocal so that we can now use multiplication. Let's do some cross-reducing. We'll divide this top and bottom by 5 to give me 3 and 4. And this tells me it's 3/16 of a cup for one cookie. Now that we know what it is for one cookie, we can use multiplication to see how much it would be for 25 cookies. So we would take 3/16, multiply it by 25. A reminder, 25 is like a fraction of 25/1. And since the question had a mixed fraction for the cups of sugar, let's convert this into a mixed fraction as well. 16 can go into 75 4 times. 4 times 16 is 64. We subtract them, we get a remainder of 11. So our answer would be 4, and then our remainder divided by 16. So she would need 4 and 11/16 cups of sugar. Like I said, these division questions are a little bit harder. All right, here's our last question. Of all the land on Earth, about 3/10 is Asia and 3/25 is South America. How many times as big as South America is Asia? And we want to answer with a mixed fraction. Now this has the how many times as big. So this was the other hint for a division question. Now this question is definitely a lot trickier, and I'll go through how you would break this question apart. So first off, we're asking how many times as big is Asia compared to South America. Now we know that Asia is bigger than South America, if you've seen a map, and we can also look at these fractions here. 3/10 is a lot bigger than 3/25. So the first thing to recognize is that Asia is bigger than South America. That tells us that our answer should be bigger than 1. Because it should be at least 1 times as big. So it might be 1.5, it could be 2 times, it could be 5 times. We haven't figured that out yet, but our answer should be bigger than 1. Now the way that we could write out this question is we want to know how many times bigger is Asia. So if Asia is 3/10 of the Earth, we want to know how many times bigger is that when we times it by 3/25. So this times comes up here. So how many times as big as South America? So what do we have to multiply South America by to get Asia? Now you've probably seen questions like this if you've done algebra before. And we could see this as a much simpler question. Imagine if these numbers weren't fractions. Imagine if we had something much simpler. If we had something like 8 equals x times 2, so some unknown times 2. What we can do is we can divide both sides by 2. And that would give us that x is equal to 8 divided by 2. We can do the same thing here. That tells us that this question mark should be equal to 3/10 divided by 3/25. Anytime you see these times as big as questions, the calculation will always be a division of one by the other. The key is to figure out which one is getting divided by the other, because if you mess up the order here, you won't get the right answer. And you'll probably need some practice with these, but that's okay. Once we're here, now we can answer our question. This is a division question, so we can flip our second fraction and change it to multiplication. Let's do some cross-reducing. I can cancel out those 3's to make them into 1's. I can divide both of these by 5. I get 5 and 2. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 1 is 2. And we want to answer with a mixed fraction. So 5/2. 2 goes into 5 2 times with a remainder of 1. So our answer would be 2.5. So to answer the question, Asia is 2.5 times as big as South America. Now we said at the start our answer should be bigger than 1, and it is. 2.5 is definitely bigger than 1. That's the end of our video here. I'd really encourage you to now take a look at some of the homework, try out some of the basic problems, and then see if you can get some of these harder word problems. If you don't get them right away, that's totally fine. Just make sure you ask for some help. See you all in the next video.